Right. So are you ready to tackle this big idea,
Always up for a challenge.
this idea of American exceptionalism?
Oh, yeah. It's a loaded term for sure. It gets thrown around a lot, but I'm not sure everyone really understands what it means or where it comes from.
Exactly. And, we've got this great set of sources that you've provided that really delve into it,
Mm.
from historical perspectives to, present day critiques. So,
Yeah, we've got Tocqueville, of course, can't talk about American exceptionalism without him. He was writing back in the 1800s and
already
already.
saw America as this like unique experiment in democracy, right? Like something special was happening here.
Yeah, he was struck by the emphasis on individual freedom, equality, the whole shebang. But, that's kind of where things get interesting because is this exceptionalism actually a good thing? Or is it just a way to, kind of ignore some of the not so great parts of our history?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I think one way to get at that is to unpack this idea of an American political creed that supposedly sets us apart,
Ah, yes, the bedrock of American exceptionalism.
right? Individual freedom, equality of opportunity,
Hmm.
the rule of law, all that good stuff.
Sounds pretty good in theory.
Right. But does it actually hold up in practice? I mean,
Right.
there's no denying that this belief in being exceptional has led to some incredible achievements.
Absolutely.
Putting a man on the moon, for example, or leading the world in technological innovation. That takes a certain kind of confidence, a belief that anything is possible.
You need that drive, that ambition to achieve those kinds of things. But, and it's a big but,
There's always a but.
that same belief can also be used to justify some pretty questionable actions.
Manifest destiny comes to mind.
Yeah, the whole idea that America was destined to expand across the continent no matter who got in the way.
Exactly.
Right.
And that led to the displacement and often brutal treatment of Native Americans.
And then there are the foreign interventions that haven't exactly panned out as planned.
Yeah, we've got a bit of a mixed track record there.
So how do we reconcile those two sides of American exceptionalism, the triumphs and the tragedies? It's tricky, right? Because on the one hand, you have this belief in America as a force for good, a beacon of democracy.
A shining city on a hill.
Exactly. But then you have these moments where that belief seems to blind us to the harm we're causing.
Look, we're so convinced of our own righteousness that we can't see the flaws in our actions.
And that's where I think it's so important to bring in voices like Nicole Hannah-Jones and her work with the 1619 Project.
Right, because she really challenges this narrative of American exceptionalism, doesn't she?
She does. She argues that we've consistently fallen short of those lofty ideals, particularly when it comes to racial justice.
She points out that slavery and systemic racism are not just blemishes on our past, but are deeply woven into the fabric of American society.
And that's something that's really hard for a lot of people to grapple with because it challenges this deeply held belief in America as a land of freedom and equality. It forces us to confront the gap between our ideals and our reality.
Exactly. And it raises some uncomfortable questions about the very foundations of our democracy. One thing that struck me as I was reading through these sources is how often this idea of being exceptional has been used to justify excluding certain groups of people.
Oh, absolutely. It's a recurring theme throughout our history.
The Chinese Exclusion Act, the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, even some of the immigration policies being debated today.
It all comes back to this idea of who gets to be included in this exceptional America and who gets left out.
So maybe that's the question we need to be asking ourselves. What does it really mean to be an American?
Yeah.
And who gets to decide? And, when you start digging into the specifics, it's kind of hard to argue that America is so unique after all.
Right. I mean, Commons makes some pretty compelling comparisons.
It does. Like when you look at things like social safety nets or voter turnout or economic inequality.
Yeah, other democracies are actually doing a lot better than us in those areas.
And it's not just that they're doing better, it's that they've actually taken some of those democratic ideals that we pioneered and, improved on them.
Totally. Like proportional representation in Europe. It's a much fairer system than our winner-take-all elections.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
More voices get heard, more people feel represented. It's like they took the concept of democracy and ran with it.
And it makes you wonder if maybe this whole idea of American exceptionalism is actually holding us back.
Because if you already believe you're the best, why would you need to change?
Right. It breeds complacency. It makes us resistant to learning from others.
So if we're being honest with ourselves, maybe American exceptionalism isn't something we've already achieved.
Maybe it's something we need to constantly be working towards.
A goal to strive for, not a given.
Exactly. And that means being willing to admit when we're wrong.
And to learn from our mistakes.
And to try new things.
Even if it means borrowing ideas from other countries.
Even if those countries aren't, exceptional. like us.
Okay, so let's get practical here. What are some concrete steps we can take to actually make America live up to its ideals?
Well, for starters, we could get rid of the Electoral College.
Whoa, hold on. That's a pretty big change.
It is. But it would make our elections a lot more democratic, don't you think?
I mean, it would definitely make sure that the president actually reflects the will of the people.
Exactly. And it would get rid of this whole idea of swing states and all the craziness that comes with that.
Yeah, because right now it feels like only a handful of voters in a few key states actually get to decide the election.
Yeah, exactly. So abolishing the Electoral College would be a huge step towards making our democracy more fair and representative.
Okay, so what else is on the to-do list for a more exceptional America?
Well, we also need to strengthen voting rights.
Because everyone deserves to have their voice heard, right?
Absolutely. But unfortunately, there are a lot of efforts to suppress the vote, particularly targeting minority groups.
And then there's gerrymandering,
Oh, yeah. That's a whole other can of worms.
where politicians get to draw the voting districts in a way that gives their party an unfair advantage.
It's basically rigging the system,
So we need to make sure that everyone has an equal say in our political system.
and that our elections are actually free and fair.
Okay, but even if we fix all of that, there's still this huge issue of economic inequality.
Right. You can't have a truly healthy democracy when the gap between the rich and the poor is so vast.
Because wealth equals power.
Exactly. And when the wealthy have all the power, they can rig the system in their favor.
Which means that the needs of the majority of Americans get ignored,
So we need to find ways to level the playing field,
like progressive taxation
where the wealthy pay their fair share,
and investing in education and healthcare.
and strengthening the social safety net.
You know, it's interesting how this conversation has shifted from bragging about how great America is to talking about all the ways we need to improve.
Right. It's like we finally started to realize that true American exceptionalism isn't about resting on our laurels.
It's about constantly striving to be better
And that means being honest about our shortcomings.
and being willing to learn from others.
And most importantly, it means taking action.
Because words without action are meaningless.
So let's stop talking about how exceptional America is and start actually making it so.
And that brings us to a really interesting concept that I think sheds some light on why this change is so difficult.
What's that?
This idea of plutocratic populism.
Ooh, that's a mouthful.
It is. But it's basically this idea that a wealthy elite is manipulating the system while claiming to represent the common man.
It's like they're using populism as a cover for their own self-interest.
And it works because people want to believe that their country is the best.
So they're willing to overlook the flaws in the system,
And they're less likely to demand change.
which means that the wealthy elite gets to stay in power.
And the cycle continues.
So we need to break that cycle.
We need to see through the smoke and mirrors.
And we need to start demanding better,
Because we deserve a democracy that works for everyone.
not just the wealthy few.
But that's a conversation for another time. Okay, so right before the break, you were about to tell us about some other countries and how they're dealing with some of these big issues.
Right, right. Yeah, because, it's pretty interesting when you start looking at places that have actually managed to make their systems, more democratic. It makes
Yeah.
you think, like,
Like, why are we having so much trouble?
exactly. Like America, we're supposed to be the gold standard, the example for everyone else. But
Oh, we seem to be kind of stuck.
yeah, it's like we're so attached to this idea of, we're already exceptional that
We don't see the need to change.
yeah, exactly. And maybe that's the problem, right? Maybe we need to shift our thinking a little bit.
So instead of saying we're exceptional,
You see, we're working towards it.
like it's a goal, not a guarantee.
Right, it's a process. It's something we have to constantly strive for.
Yeah, and maybe that means being more willing to, admit when we're messing up
Absolutely. And to learn from our mistakes.
and to be open to new ideas.
Even if those ideas come from, other countries.
Yeah, because sometimes it feels like we're so focused on, American exceptionalism that we forget that other countries might have some good ideas too.
Right, like we're so convinced that we're the best that we don't even bother to look around and see what other people are doing.
And that's a shame because there's a lot we can learn from each other.
Absolutely. So maybe a good place to start is with this idea of humility.
Like acknowledging that we don't have all the answers.
Right. And that we can always be better.
That we're not perfect.
And that's okay.
It's interesting how this whole conversation about American exceptionalism has kind of turned into a conversation about,
About self-improvement.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like maybe true American exceptionalism isn't about you know, bragging about how great we are.
It's about constantly striving to be better.
It's about acknowledging our flaws and working to fix them.
It's about being open to change and growth.
And it's about recognizing that, America isn't just one thing.
It's a collection of voices and experiences and perspectives.
And that's what makes it so special.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think that's a good note to end on.
It is. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive into
American exceptionalism.
American exceptionalism. It's been a fascinating journey.
It has. And, hopefully it's given our listeners some food for thought.
Yeah, some things to ponder.
Some questions to ask themselves.
Because at the end of the day, American exceptionalism isn't just an academic concept.
It's something that affects all of us.
It shapes our life, our
communities, our future.
So yeah, let's keep the conversation going.
Let's keep questioning.
Let's keep challenging.
And let's keep striving to make America
truly exceptional.
Thanks for listening.